Alrighty, so me and five of my buddies, we were going on a week-long camping trip up in Elk State Forest, and it's north central Pennsylvania. We were, I want to say, northeast of Wharton, which is a little town up that way. It lies right on the edge of Elk County or Elk State Forest. Anyhow, and like I said, we were going up on a week-long trip, and we were going off trail and just what we had to carry with us. And each of my friends, we had all been going camping together since we were teenagers. We've known each other for years, and about the most reliable kind of people you could have around, honestly, especially in the woods. All very capable people. But we ended up going, found a good spot to park, and we just set off into the woods. We ended up going, I believe it was northwest, into the woods, and we got to our spot where we parked at about noon, because we don't live up that way. We live down in southwestern Pennsylvania, a lot of us. And it was a long drive up there. As you can imagine, it's a big state. Anyway, we got into where we parked our cars at about, like I said, noon, and we had about 4 to 5 hours before dark because it was getting into fall. Leaves hadn't really started to fall heavy yet. It was more still into changing colors and all that, but it was getting to it, so days were getting shorter and all that. Whenever we had set off, we started up this one mountain, and it was fairly rugged and very, very minimal sign of any kind of like human interference. Like there wasn't a whole lot of garbage. And like I said, we were going off trail anyway, so we didn't expect to find much anyway. So we had hiked for the better part of four hours or so. When it was just starting to be dusk, we had ended up finding a clearing near the top end of this mountainside and decided to set up camp. So we set up our fires, we set up our hammocks, because tent camping is for suckers, in my own personal opinion. And I will recommend that. If you have never been hammock camping, it is something you absolutely have to try. You get the right hang, it is way better night's sleep than sleeping on the ground.
No, it's great. I used to do that on the Appalachian Trail all the time. Yeah, that's great stuff.
So anyway, we had set up our camp in this little clearing. We had made dinner, and night settled in. And as you can imagine, a bunch of mid-20, grown men hanging out in the woods. We're going to be laughing and carrying on, having a good time, And we're sitting around the campfire, carrying on, having a good time. And it's getting in dark, and just as about we were getting ready to go to bed, which I would imagine to be around anywhere between 11 and 1 o'clock in the morning. None of us were really paying attention to the time, but dark, kind of, And I'm sitting in my chair, and something hit me in the back. Nothing hard, nothing crazy. So I stood up, and I'm facing campfire, and all five of us are sitting around it. So I turned around and looked into the woods, and as you know, fire blindness is a very big thing, and I couldn't see very far past the tree line at all, and didn't see nothing. And I pulled up my flashlight, and I carry, whenever we go camping or hiking together, I always make sure I have a really good flashlight. And I'm actually still using the same one to this day. It's about 3,000 lumens, so it'll cut through a little bit of night. And I shined it in the direction of what I thought, and I didn't see anything, no movement, no nothing. And I looked down in the chair, and it was a rock, something, I wouldn't say any bigger than maybe like a $50 size around. Nothing crazy big. And it wasn't like it was thrown with any kind of force. It was like more of a toss kind of thing. That's why I was figuring like, well, whatever threw it or whatever hit me would have been right there, within eye shot, even in the dark, But like I said, I didn't see a thing. And whenever I had stood up and pulled my flashlight up, the rest of my buddies, they all had went silent. And it was kind of like a silent rule between the lot of us that if we're out in the woods together and any one of us, perks up because of something going on, we all just shut up and we all pay attention. Well, after I was satisfied that there was pretty much nothing there for me to see, I go and turn back to the fire, and no sooner do I do that did I see a rock come out of the woods, about the same size as what had hit me, in the complete opposite direction, hitting my buddy that was across the campfire from me. Now, mind you, in this amount of time, there wasn't but maybe 20 seconds, so nothing's going to move outside of the line of sight of all six of us in 20 seconds to get around behind us without making any noise, especially in the dark and with no light. I don't care what it is. It's going to make some kind of a noise. It's going to be seen. And that's when I realized that, well, whatever hit me hasn't moved, and now there's something on the other side of us. So now all six of us are up. And I'm running through my head of, well, what kind of animal can actually throw anything? And there ain't many. And my mind immediately went to, well, there's somebody out here with us. Thinking probably people. But I don't know anyone with enough guts to walk up on six grown men in the middle of the woods at night, especially with, like I said, no light, without announcing themselves. And at that point, I had my 45 on me, 45 ACP, and I had pulled it out. And whatever was seeing us would have absolutely noticed me doing that, and they did. And that's when things became, I wouldn't say aggressive, but more than what it was before. They started moving around, circling around us, and they continued throwing stones at us, from off where we couldn't see them. And they were thrown quite a bit harder than they were before, and there was no communication. And like I said, we didn't see any lights out in the woods either. So whatever was doing it out there basically blind. And we had a decent fire going, so it's not like they were close to us to be able to for us not to see it. And at this point, all of us had carried sidearms. All of us had carried guns with us for protection, because there's elk up there, obviously, hence the name of the forest. But there's also black bear, there's bobcat, there's coyotes, and you never know what an animal's gonna be doing, especially when it's hungry. So we'd always carried those just to keep ourselves safe. And whatever was out there knew full well that every one of us was armed. And this is when I realized that we weren't dealing with people, because anybody that would be out there, whether it be, teenagers playing a prank, or even a random bunch of hillbillies, if you want to call, if you want to go that route, they would have said, okay, hey, then joke's over now, And I was, like I said, I didn't hear any of that. But whatever was out there circling around us throughout the night, it was definitely at least as big as a man, because it sounded like a grown man crashing through brush and forest and footsteps. We could hear footsteps being, stomping through and around. And like I said, throughout the night, most of us, none of us could obviously even consider going to sleep. We ended up staying up until it was getting into dawn. And just before the sun started peeking over the mountains, they had turned and ran off in opposite directions away from us before that lights really started to kick in. And now, none of us had any fear of the forest at all. None of us had any fear of, the animals that were out there. It's not like we ever would have had to worry about dealing with a grizzly bear, or a moose. We just don't live in that area. But it was definitely a surreal moment for us. And like I said, this happened on our first night of what was supposed to be a 7-day trip. And we ended up packing our bags and we had left. We left that day, the next day. As soon as it was bright enough for us to pack up our gear, we were out. And then, as me and my one buddy, my Marine buddy that was with us, had finished packing up first, we decided it's bright enough. We knew they ran off. We're going to go see if we could figure out what was going on. And we walked off into the tree line, probably 15, 20 yards into the tree line, and we could see where they were circling around us. All the brush was, broken out into a path. All the leaf litter was beaten down, and I had ended up coming across a print that looked human, if you were barefoot, but it would had a distinct lack of a foot arch. And I mean, I don't claim to be any, master tracker or anything like that, but I know what a human footprint looks like in the mud or in the sand. Whenever you look at it, you can tell which foot it is pretty simply by the toes and, again, by the arch, because there's a hollow spot in that footprint. And this one didn't have it. It looked more, flat-footed. And it was no bigger than mine. Like if I would have taken my boot off and stepped there in that same mud, it wasn't any longer than mine. It was a little bit wider, but the impression that it made was a lot deeper, which, pretty simply put, that just goes to tell you that whatever was out there and made that print was a lot heavier than I was. Now, at the time, I was between 180 and 190 pounds. So whatever it made that print had to be at least 250, if not more. But it had the same footprint, length that I had. And I guess I should put in for reference that I wear a size 11. So I have a fairly large foot. But, it was, after we had found that, we had regrouped with the rest of our buddies. And like I said, we had finished packing up and we went straight back to our cars and we had left. We weren't staying there another night.